You know, I was in a debate not too long ago, 20 atheists, intellectuals, brilliant in their own right, all arrayed against the idea of God, the Kuji of God. And I stood there not as a preacher, not as a zealot, but as a psychologist, as a man who spent decades watching what happens to people, real people, when they are told that nothing truly matters. Tourism passes, nothing truly mattered. When they are told that God is dead and we have killed him. And here's the thing, I don't argue for the existence of God the way a logician might argue for the existence of a mathematical theorem. I argue like a man who's watched people crumble under the weight of despair with supersapita deseri, of despair, who's listened to them in quiet offices late at night, whispering that they see no purpose, no light, and no way forward. Meaning is not optional. It's not a luxury. It's not a hallucination of the weak. Meaning is the antidote to chaos. And chaos, it's always lurking, which is casts more to it, in the chopassion to seduction orderlies of power. You see it in the breakdown of order, in the shattering of families, in addiction, in resentment, in the moral confusion that makes the difference between good and evil seem arbitrary. Now, if you throw God out, fine, fine, but you do not get to keep the structure that made life bearable in his absence. You don't get to jettison belief and keep the values as if they were detachable from their source. So you can't sever the roots and expect the tree to stand. And when these 20 brilliant atheists, each one armed with Darwin, Dawkins, and Hitchens, tell me that we can be moral without God, I ask. What do you mean by moral? What do you mean by moral? What ground are you standing on? Because I know where the line between heaven and hell runs. It runs through every human heart. And if there is no ultimate judge, no sacred ideal above the will to power, then who decides where that line is? You, me, the mob. Listen, I am not asking you to swallow superstition. I'm not asking you to kneel before a dogma. I'm asking you to notice that every time you act as if your suffering matters, you are testifying to something beyond the material. Every time you tell the truth when a lie would be easier, when you lift a burden you could ignore, when you love despite the risk, you are living out a religious ideal whether you acknowledge it or not. And that's the tragedy and the hope. You don't have to believe in God the way a child believes in Santa Claus. But you have to live as if your actions echo into eternity. Because they do. They matter. Every decision is a brick in the structure of your soul and the structure of the world. So here's what I say to the 20 atheists and to you. Clean your room. Tell the truth. Carry your cross. Aim upward. Become the kind of person who could stand in the aftermath of chaos and rebuild. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us do that, we can forge something like heaven out of the wreckage of disbelief. It starts with you. It starts now. It starts with the decision to take on the burden of being, voluntarily. Because in a godless world, the only alternative to tyranny or despair is responsibility. That's the price of freedom. That's the path to meaning. And that's what we're called to. Let me tell you something that may strike you as very spotty. Let me tell you something that may strike you as self-evident, but which has become almost unspeakable in the modern world. You cannot live without meaning. You can survive, yes. You can exist. You can eat and breathe and go through the motions. But you cannot truly live, at least a part of the trullers. Not in the way that matters, without meaning. And we all know it. We feel it in our bones. Now, I've spent decades speaking with people, from hardened criminals in maximum security prisons to young students at elite universities. I've seen the full range of human experience. And across that spectrum, one thing holds true. When a person has lost their sense of meaning, they become unmoored. The structure of reality itself seems to disintegrate before their eyes. Suffering becomes unbearable. Each Jew of Joy turns flat. And worse still, they know it. They know something is wrong, even if they can't articulate what. Oh, you see, the modern atheist may triumphantly declare that life has no inherent meaning, due that the universe is cold and indifferent, and that we are nothing more than a cosmic accident. And fine, maybe that's a useful hypothesis for understanding the physical world. But try living as if it were true. Just try, or bone, sir. Because when the storms come, and they will, when the illness strikes, or betrayal cuts you to the bone, or death sits at your doorstep, you'll find that scientific materialism doesn't offer much in the way of comfort. It won't hold you up when you're crushed beneath the weight of your own mortality. Ellie, I remember one young man I worked with, brilliant, cynical, a self-proclaimed atheist, proud of it. And, he said life was nothing but suffering and chaos. Why should I care, he asked me. What's the point? And that's the terrible question, isn't it? What's the point? That's not an intellectual curiosity. That's a cry from the soul. That's someone standing at the edge of the abyss and praying, even if they don't realize it, that there's something, anything to pull them back. Hello. So what do we do with that? We choose meaning. We create meaning. Or more accurately, we discover it often in the most unexpected places. In love. In sacrifice. In truth spoken, when a lie would have been easier. In the slow, agonizing process of becoming someone who can bear the responsibility of existence without bitterness. That's not arbitrary. That's not relative. That's something real. More real than matter in a profound sense. Superstition, Furry yay. And that's where the religious traditions come in. They aren't mere superstition. They're not fairy tales for the weak-minded. They are deep, ancient technologies of meaning, built over thousands of years to help us navigate the chaos. The archetypal hero descends into the underworld, confronts the dragon, rescues the father rescues the father or the soul, and brings back the treasure. That story is encoded in every culture, and for good reason. It's the story of us. It's the path toward redemption. Meaning isn't optional. It's necessary. It's the structure that organizes our suffering, the light that guides us through the darkness. And when we throw it away in the name of progress or cleverness, we don't become free, we become lost. Let me tell you something hard, something weighty, something you already know, whether or not you want to admit it. Responsibility is the heaviest burden, but it is also the source of life's deepest meaning. And in a world where God is dead, where we've thrown away the transcendent scaffolding that upheld our moral systems and replaced it with relativism and convenience, responsibility doesn't disappear. Multiplies. You see, if there is no divine structure to the universe, if there is no higher judge watching, no eternal standard to which we must aspire, then who carries the burden of good and evil? You do, and you can't dodge it. There's no cosmic parent to clean up after you, no grand metaphysical authority to hide behind. If God is absent, then it is on your shoulders to justify your existence, moment by moment, action by action. I remember a man I knew, sharp, ambitious, deeply rational. He prided himself on having deconstructed every belief he had inherited. Religion, a relic. Morality, a social construct. The universe, a vast, meaningless void. And yet, he was depressed, anxious, chronically indecisive. Not because he wasn't intelligent, not because he lacked opportunity, but because in tearing down all the old structures, he had given himself nothing to stand on. He had no why for his suffering, and suffering always comes. You have to understand something. You have to understand something. When you strip away religious frameworks, you just end up in some enlightened utopia of pure reason. You end up in nihilism, and nihilism is not peace, it's paralysis. Place, Nowler's nothing matters. It's the realization that if nothing matters, then everything is permitted. And that is a terrifying freedom. It doesn't liberate you. It burdens you. It puts you face to face with the horrifying possibility that all the pain in your life might be meaningless unless you give it meaning. And how do you do that? Through responsibility, not rights, not happiness. Responsibility. Responsibility. The responsibility to carry your cross, to bear the suffering of existence with your head held high. So, to tell the truth even when it costs you, to take care of your family, your soul, your community, without waiting to be thanked or rescued or excused. Because no one else is coming. That's the brutal reality. And yet, it's also the glory of it. And because in that responsibility, in that weight, you find your strength. So in Nachamos Contra there's a profound psychological transformation that occurs when someone stops asking, what can I get from the world? And starts asking, what does the world need from me? That's when meaning rushes in. Rushes in, that's when you start to stand up straight, shoulders back, and face the chaos, not as a victim, but as a redeemer. If you reject God, fine, but then you become the one who must bear the full weight of moral responsibility. You become the judge and the judged. You become the author of your values and the enforcer of their consequences. Oh, Chekhov. There is no one left to blame and nowhere to hide. But that's not a curse. That's your calling. That's the path forward. Because in the absence of divine command, the only path to sanity is to voluntarily accept the responsibility of being fully and without excuse. Let me be blunt with you. Nihilism is not an intellectual position. It's a sickness of the soul. And it's spreading like wildfire through a culture that has forgotten what it means to believe. You don't arrive at nihilism because you've thought too much. You arrive there because you felt too little, because you've lost touch with the deep rupture of being, because you've let the fire go out. I've seen it in my clinical practice. I've seen it in lecture halls. I've seen it in young men, especially bright, sensitive, often intelligent, who've been told by their professors, by the media, sometimes by their own families, that values are subjective, that religion is delusion. Religious, that tradition is oppressive, that life is a game of dominance and power. And do you know what they're left with? Ella, nothing. No reason to get up in the morning. Sense of direction, no moral compass. Just the cold logic of a materialist world in which nothing ultimately matters. Not love, not loyalty, not beauty, not sacrifice. Just atoms colliding in the void, with consciousness a meaningless accident along the way. And people say, oh, that's brave. That's honest. That's facing reality. No, it's not. It's a lie of omission. It's a half-truth masquerading as wisdom, because the part they don't tell you is that nihilism does. Just make you intellectually lost. It devours you from the inside. It turns you bitter, resentful, cynical, and eventually it makes you dangerous, not just to others, but to yourself. And we see this everywhere. When we see this everywhere, we see it in the rising tide of depression, in addiction, in suicide, in the obsession with tearing down everything that was once held sacred. People think they're rejecting lies, but what they're actually rejecting is the burden of value. Because to accept that something truly matters is to accept that you have a responsibility to uphold it. And that's hard. It's easier to pretend it's all meaningless. So it's easier to pretend it's all meaningless. So you never have to try, never have to fail, never have to care. But here's the problem. Human beings are meaning-hungry creatures. We can't live without it. And if we don't find it in truth and beauty and love and duty, we will find it in tribalism, in ideology, in hatred, in destruction. The void in ideology, in hatred, in destruction. The void will not stay empty. The hunger will not disappear. If we strip away the transcendent, the sacred, the archetypal, we don't become freer. We become slaves to whatever new god we invent to take its place. Because make no mistake, nihilism doesn't lead to freedom. Mycoke and Parcher's No Way Might. It leads to tyranny. First of the self, then of society. No, then society. It paves the way for authoritarianism, for extremism, for violence. And we've seen it, haven't we? In the gulags, in the camps, in the revolutions soaked in blood. When people believe in nothing, they can be made to believe in anything. And so what do? We reawaken the hunger for the transcendent. We remind ourselves and each other that some things are worth suffering for. Suffering, pasty. So that truth exists, even if it's hard to find. That beauty matters, even if it's fragile. That love is real, even if it's vulnerable. We aim upward, not because we know with certainty what waits at the summit, but because we know what happens when we don't let me tell you something hard, something weighty, something you already know, whether or not you want to admit it. Responsibility is the heaviest burden, but it is also the source of life's deepest meaning. And in a world where God is dead, where we've thrown away the transcendent scaffolding thought that upheld our moral systems and replaced it with relativism and convenience, responsibility doesn't disappear. It multiplies. You see, if there is no divine structure to the universe, if there is no higher judge watching, no eternal standard to which we must aspire, then who carries the burden of good and evil? You do, and you can't dodge it. There's no cosmic parent to clean up after you, no grand metaphysical authority to hide behind. If God is absent, then it is on your shoulders to justify your existence, moment by moment, action by action. I remember a man I knew, sharp, ambitious, deeply rational. He prided himself on having deconstructed every belief he had inherited. Religion, a relic. Morality, a social construct. The universe, a vast, meaningless void. And yet, he was depressed, anxious, chronically indecisive. Not because he wasn't intelligent, not because he lacked opportunity, but because, in tearing down all the old structures, he had given himself nothing to stand on. He had no why for his suffering, and suffering always comes. You have to understand something. When you strip away religious frameworks, you don't end up in some enlightened utopia of pure reason. You end up in nihilism, and nihilism is not peace, it's paralysis. It's the realization that if nothing matters, then everything is permitted, and that is a terrifying freedom. It doesn't liberate you, it burdens you. It puts you face to face with the horrifying possibility that all the pain in your life might be meaningless unless you give it meaning. And how do you do that? Through responsibility, not rights, not happiness, responsibility. So the responsibility to carry your cross, to bear the suffering of existence with your head held high, and to tell the truth even when it costs you, to take care of your family, your soul, your community, without waiting.